My entire family burned $5 million in front of my grandmother, and laughed while it turned to ash. I was the only one who didn't. The next morning, a bank manager locked the door, looked me in the eye, and said something that destroyed my family forever. This isn't a story about money. It's about what people reveal when they think nothing is at stake, and what happens when they're wrong. My name is Edie Usher. I'm 29 years old, and everything I thought I knew about my family ended on Christmas Eve in a house that had never once been locked in 47 years. My grandmother's house sat on a quiet hill outside town, the kind of place people drove past without noticing, even though it held more history than most lives ever will. The front door was always open. Not just unlocked, open. She used to say that if someone wanted to come in, they probably needed to. Nobody in my family understood that about her. They thought it was naive. I knew it was a choice. I had been going there every Saturday for as long as I could remember. Not out of obligation, not because anyone asked me to, but because it felt like the only place where conversations actually meant something. We would sit at her kitchen table with mismatched teacups, the kind collected over decades instead of bought in sets, and she would ask me about my week. Not in the casual way people ask when they're waiting for their turn to talk, but in a way that made you slow down and actually think about your answer. I was a teacher, 3rd grade, and most of my stories were small things. A student who finally understood fractions. Another who refused to speak in class but wrote essays that felt too big for his age. I told her once about that boy, how he never spoke during group work but filled pages when he wrote. I said I thought he needed patience. She looked at me over the rim of her teacup and said, "Then give him time." That was it. No lecture, no advice disguised as wisdom. Just one sentence that stayed with me longer than anything else anyone said that week. The rest of my family didn't see her like that. My mother called her the old lady, like reducing her to that made her easier to ignore. My father spoke about her like she was a problem he had already solved by staying away. My brother treated her house like a place to pass through when he needed something, and my sister treated everything like it was content waiting to be posted. None of them asked her questions. None of them noticed the small things, like how her hands had started to shake when she poured tea, or how she sat down a little slower each time I visited. I noticed. I didn't say anything. I think part of me was afraid that saying it out loud would make it real. 2 months before Christmas, she told me the truth. We were in the garden, cutting back rosemary for the winter. The light was low, that late autumn kind of gold that makes everything look like it's already becoming a memory. She set her shears down and sat on the bench in a way that felt heavier than usual. Then she said my name, quietly, the way people do when they're about to change something you can't undo. "Edie, I'm dying." There was no build-up, no softening of the words. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She had known for months. I asked about treatment, about doctors, about anything that could make it feel less final. She shook her head. "No hospitals," she said. "No machines. I want to stay here." Then she took my hand, and her grip was steady in a way that didn't match what she had just told me. "Don't tell them," she said. I didn't understand at first. She saw that on my face. "I want one last normal Christmas," she explained. "I don't want pity. I don't want them looking at me like I'm already gone." Then she smiled, and it wasn't a sad smile. It was the kind she wore when she knew something you didn't. "And besides," she added, "I have something planned." I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was shocked, but because somewhere inside me I had already known. The way you know a season is ending before the first leaf falls. The weeks moved faster after that. Thanksgiving came and went. December arrived. And every Saturday, I kept going, like always. We talked about small things. Books. Recipes. My students. She never brought it up again, and I didn't either. It felt like we had made an agreement without saying it out loud. Christmas Eve came cold and quiet, the kind of cold that settles into your bones before you even notice it. I drove up the hill in my old car, the engine making that familiar sound I had been ignoring for months, and parked in the same spot I always did. She met me at the door, wearing that corn yellow sweater she loved, the one with the sleeves slightly too long. She kissed my forehead the way she always did, one hand on my jaw, like she was checking to make sure I was still the same person. "Tell me about your class," she said, like she said every Saturday. I almost laughed. Even now, she was holding on to normal. The rest of the family arrived not long after. My father came in first, stomping snow off his boots like he was announcing himself. He moved through the house like it still belonged to him, opening the fridge without asking, taking up space the way he always had. My mother followed, already complimenting things in that overly bright tone she used when she was measuring something instead of appreciating it. My brother showed up late, barely making eye contact, already asking about borrowing something before he had even taken his coat off. My sister came in last, phone in hand, recording, talking to an audience that wasn't there. "Cozy grandma vibes," she said into the camera, and I remember thinking how strange it was to turn a moment like that into something consumable. Dinner started loud, like it always did. Conversations overlapping, nobody really listening, the sound of cutlery against plates filling the gaps where something real should have been. My grandmother moved between the stove and the table slowly, carefully, but nobody noticed. Nobody asked if she needed help. Nobody asked how she was feeling. They talked about themselves, their plans, their problems, their small victories. I watched her watching them, and there was something in her expression I couldn't quite name. Not sadness. Not disappointment. Something quieter than that. Then she stood up. At first, nobody noticed. That's how used they were to her being in the background. She cleared her throat, a small, precise sound, and finally the room shifted just enough for attention to move toward her. She walked to the side table and picked up a small wooden box. It was simple, nothing decorative, the kind of box that doesn't draw attention to itself. She brought it back to the table and opened it slowly. Inside were 5 envelopes. Cream-colored, unsealed, identical. She didn't say anything. She just started handing them out, one by one, placing each envelope beside its person like it was something ordinary. Mine was last. When she set it down, her hand rested on my shoulder for a second longer than necessary. I looked up at her, and she held my gaze in a way that made everything else in the room feel distant. Then she sat back down. My father opened his first. He always did that, opened things first, like it was his right. His expression shifted almost immediately. Expectation turned into confusion, then something sharper. My brother leaned over to see, and the moment he read the number he laughed. Not a surprised laugh. A dismissive one. "Is this a joke?" he said. My sister held hers up, tilting it like she expected to find some trick in the light. My mother's face did something strange for a moment, like she wasn't sure which reaction to choose. Then my father spoke again, louder this time. "It's fake. Don't be an idiot." And just like that, the tone of the room changed. He dropped his check onto his plate. My mother tore hers in half, slowly, deliberately, like she was making a point. My brother crumpled his into a ball and tossed it aside. And my sister stood up, walked to the fireplace, and dropped hers into the flames. I watched the paper catch, curl, darken, disappear. $5 million turning to ash, and they were laughing. I looked at my grandmother. She didn't react. Didn't argue. Didn't even blink. She just looked at me. And in that moment, everything became clear in a way I couldn't fully explain yet. This wasn't about money. It never had been. I picked up my envelope, opened it, saw the number, felt the weight of it in my hands. Then I folded it carefully, once, and placed it inside my purse. "Thank you, Grandma," I said. She nodded. Just once. And that was the end of it.